Hi guys, tonight we're sinking into the deep, dusty beginning of iron, the quiet metal that would one day hold up towers, pull ploughs through stubborn soil, stitch ships together, and ride invisibly through your own blood, before iron becomes swords, railways, engines, bridges, and suspiciously heavy gym equipment. It begins as colour underfoot, as red earth on fingers, as dark stones warming beside a fire. Imagine you're standing at the edge of an ancient camp, the sky bruised purple, the smoke low and sweet, the ground cool beneath bare feet. Somewhere nearby, someone notices a rock that stains the hand like dried sunset. Is it magic? Medicine? Paint? Poison? Treasure? Or just another annoying thing to trip over in the dark? Humanity is about to find out very slowly, because apparently civilization enjoys learning the hard way. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe and comment where you're listening from and what your local time is. As you drift into the glow of the first fires, now dim the lights, and you find yourself far from steel mills, far from engines, far from the sharp ring of a hammer on an anvil. You are in a world before iron has a name that sounds powerful. It is not yet the backbone of cities. It is not yet the skeleton of machines. It is not even a tool in most human hands. It is only a presence in the landscape, patient and silent. You walk through a valley at dawn, when mist rests in the low places and birds call from thorn trees. The air smells of damp soil, wood ash, animal hide, and crushed grass. Under your feet, the earth changes colour. Here it is brown. There it is black. Then, suddenly, it glows a dull red, as if the ground remembers a fire that burned long ago. You crouch and touch it. The dust clings to your skin. It is soft, dry, and faintly gritty, leaving a rusty smear across your fingertips. Long before people made iron tools, they knew iron as pigment. Mainstream archaeology gives us a beautiful clue here. Ochre, often rich in iron oxide, was used by early humans for body decoration, cave painting, burial practices, hide treatment, and perhaps symbolic rituals across many regions of the ancient world. You can picture a hand dipping into red powder and pressing against stone. You can hear the breath in the cave, the scrape of mineral on rock, the hush of people watching colour appear where there had been darkness. Iron's first gift to humanity may not have been strength. It may have been colour. That is worth letting settle. Before iron cut forests or broke soil, it marked bodies, walls, and graves. It helped early humans say, in their own quiet way, "We were here." Perhaps you stand inside a cave, where smoke from a small lamp curls upward and the walls seem to move in the flicker. The air smells of tallow, mineral dust, and cold stone. Someone beside you grinds red ochre with a rounded pebble. The sound is patient, dry, almost sleepy. Scrape, turn, scrape, turn. The powder gathers like powdered sunset in a shell or a hollow bone. Of course, because ancient people were practical as well as mysterious. Ochre was not only art. It could help preserve hides. It could serve as a sun barrier. It might have discouraged insects when mixed with fats. It may have mattered in social identity, ritual, trade, or healing. Historians and archaeologists still debate how much of early ochre use was symbolic and how much was ordinary survival wrapped in beautiful colour. The trouble is, ancient dust rarely leaves a diary. Very rude of it, really. Still, you can feel the attraction. Red is the colour of blood, fire, ripe fruit, sunset, danger, and life. When early people found red earth, they did not need a chemistry lesson to sense that it mattered. Iron oxide was speaking in a visual language older than writing. It said warmth. It said body. It said memory. You leave the cave and step into sunlight. The morning grows warmer. Your feet press into patches of red clay. In nearby streams, black grains gather in bends where water slows. Some of these dark sands contain iron minerals. They are heavy. They settle where lighter grains wash away. You scoop a handful and feel the weight of it, cool and slick with water. It slides between your fingers with a soft whisper. To your eyes, it is just strange sand. To the future, it is a hint. There are many kinds of iron-bearing stones: hematite, magnetite, limonite, siderite, and others. Their names belong to much later language, but their bodies lay exposed on hillsides, riverbanks, cliffs, and desert crusts for thousands upon thousands of years. Some were red, some were black and glossy, some were yellow-brown like old honey, some were dull and heavy. Easy to ignore unless you were the sort of person who liked picking up rocks and saying, this one feels judgmental. That habit, oddly enough, is one of civilization's secret engines. Somebody notices and somebody compares. Somebody remembers. The world is full of materials, but materials become history only when human attention holds them long enough. You pause near a hearth. Not a grand furnace, not yet. Just a campfire ringed with stones, crackling in the evening. The flames smell of resin and dry branches. Sparks lift into the dark. A child nudges coloured stones closer to the heat. An elder warms hands, meat smokes slowly. A flint tool lies near a hide. The fire changes everything it touches. Wood becomes charcoal. Clay hardens. Food softens. Bone blackens. Stone may crack. Minerals may shift colour. Somewhere in these countless experiments of daily life, people must have watched heat transform earth. Red ochre could darken. Yellow ochre could redden. Clay could become harder and more durable. Certain stones might spool, glaze, or leave strange residues. None of this was modern metallurgy, but it was education by flame. Fire was humanity's first laboratory, and its entry fee was patience, smoke in the eyes, and probably a lot of coughing. There is a quirky little tidbit tucked inside this deep past. Some ancient peoples seem to have valued stones that behave strangely around magnets. Long before magnetism was formally understood, magnetite, a natural iron oxide, can attract iron objects or align with Earth's magnetic field when naturally magnetized as lodestone. Imagine finding a stone that seems to tug at another, faintly, like it has a secret opinion. In a world where every oddity might be sacred, useful, or both, such a stone would not feel ordinary. It would feel like the earth whispering through a pebble. But most early communities did not yet have iron objects for lodestone to attract, which makes the story deliciously awkward. A magnetic stone before iron tools is like owning a key before anyone invents the lock. Still, it reveals something important. Iron was not only hidden in ores, it was hidden in phenomena, in colour, in weight, in strange behaviour, in the surprising personality of matter. As you move across ancient landscapes, you notice how closely people live with stone, flint, chert, obsidian, basalt, and quartzite-shaped blades, scrapers, axes, and points. Stone is reliable if you know it well. It breaks with a sharp edge. It can be hunted, traded, prized. Bone, antler, shell, and wood add to the toolkit. Copper and gold, when they eventually enter human hands, are softer and more cooperative than iron. They can be hammered cold. They shine. They flatter the eye. Iron, by contrast, is stubborn. It hides in compounds. It does not melt easily in ordinary fires. It demands more heat, more control, more charcoal, more air, more accidents that are not quite accidents. So in this early age, iron waits. You walk beside a river where reeds hiss in the wind. The mud sucks gently at your feet. Somewhere, red-stained water seeps from a bank, leaving orange deposits where minerals meet air. Bog iron can form in wetlands when dissolved iron gathers and oxidizes into lumps or layers. much later. People in parts of Europe would collect such deposits from marshes and bogs, almost as if the landscape were slowly growing metal. But for now, perhaps it is merely a strange crust in the mud, a colour at the edge of a pool, a stain on the ankles. The atmosphere is quiet but not empty. Human knowledge is gathering in tiny increments. You learn where certain colours appear. You learn which stones grind into good pigment. You learn which clays survive fire. You learn which fuels burn hotter. You learn how wind changes a flame, how a hollow in the ground can focus heat, how blowing through a reed makes embers flare. These are not small lessons. They are the bones of future metallurgy. Picture yourself kneeling near a fire on a cold night. The ground radiates chill through your legs. Your face warms while your back shivers. Smoke drifts into your hair. Someone adds charcoal, black and light, made from wood burned without much air. Charcoal burns hotter and cleaner than ordinary wood, though no one around you states it like a textbook. They simply know it works. They know by smell, colour, and result. They know because the fire behaves differently, and people who live close to fire are excellent listeners. The flames pulse. You hear pops from damp wood, the murmur of voices, the faint scraping of stone. A lump of red ore sits near the heat, unnoticed for hours. It will not become iron tonight. Ordinary campfire heat is not enough, but tiny chemical changes begin at the edges. The ore dries, it darkens, it loses moisture. It becomes part of the long conversation between stone and flame. This is the strange patience of iron history. It does not arrive in one brilliant moment with heroic music and a person shouting. I have invented civilization, very inconsiderate for documentary purposes. Instead, iron creeps into human life through stains, powders, pigments, heavy stones, heated earth, and repeated attention. Its discovery is less like opening a door and more like noticing over many generations that the wall has a seam. You stand now on a hillside at sunset. The valley below is filled with smoke from small fires. The air smells of grass, ash, sweat, and cooking. Red dust clings beneath your fingernails. Your palm is marked with a rusty streak. You do not yet know that this colour comes from the same element that will one day strengthen bridges, bite into fields, ring from bells, carry trains, and sit inside the hemoglobin that lets your body carry oxygen while you rest in the dark. That last thought feels almost too large for this simple place. Iron is underfoot, in the blood, in the stars, in Earth's deep heart. Yet here, at the human beginning, it is humble, it is powder, it is stain, it is a heavy stone by a fire. The mainstream fact remains clear long before iron became a metal of tools. Iron compounds helped shape human expression through ochre and mineral colour. The fringe detail lingers too magnetic. Iron stones may have seemed uncanny, perhaps even alive with hidden force, and the uncertainty stays soft around the edges. Scholars continue to question exactly when practical curiosity about iron-rich minerals began turning into technical experimentation rather than symbolic use. You breathe in the evening. The smoke is gentle now. The fire settles into red coals, and the stones around it glow with stored heat. Someone brushes ochre across a hide. Someone else grinds mineral in slow circles. A child falls asleep against a bundle of furs, cheek smudged red. The world is not yet forged, not yet industrial, not yet sharpened into iron certainty. But the first clues are everywhere. You lower your hand to the earth one more time. The red dust is cool. It clings. It waits. You stand beneath a night sky so crowded with stars that darkness itself seems stitched with silver. The air is dry and cool against your face, and the ground releases the last warmth of the day through the soles of your feet. Around you, a small settlement settles into silence. Dogs turn in circles beside doorways. Ash sinks softly in hearths. Somewhere, a baby coughs, then quiets. Above it all, a bright streak cuts across the heavens. For a breath, the whole sky appears to tear. The people around you look up. Some point, some whisper, some do nothing at all, because even wonder becomes familiar when you live under open stars. Yet sometimes, as long after such a fire in the sky, a strange stone is found in the desert, in a field, beside a dry river bed, or half buried in cold ground. It is dark on the outside, heavy in the hand, and not quite like the stones nearby. It may have a burned skin, a smoothness from its violent fall, a density that makes the wrist dip when you lift it. This is iron from the sky, long before human beings learned to reliably smelt iron ore. They sometimes use meteoritic iron. That is the mainstream historical fact at the heart of this part of the story. Meteorites that contained iron and nickel offered rare pieces of metal already made by cosmic processes, delivered with absurd drama, like the universe tossing down a sample and saying, "Here, try not to worship this too much." Naturally, people probably worshipped it at least a little. You hold a small lump in your palm. It is colder than bone, smoother than broken flint, and far heavier than it looks. It smells faintly metallic when warmed by your hand, a dry bi-mineral scent like rain on stone but sharper. Someone near you taps it with another rock. The sound is different from ordinary stone. Not a dull crack, not the glassy snap of flint, but a tight, hard note, a sound with a secret inside. In many early societies, and such metal must have seemed supernatural. It did not come from a furnace. It did not come from a mine. It fell from the heavens, or at least appeared where no one expected it, blackened as if by divine fire. You can imagine the stories forming almost instantly. A fallen star, a bone of the sky, a tear from a god, a gift from ancestors, a warning, a blessing, a problem for the village pessimist, who now has something new to complain about. The oldest known worked iron objects include small beads from ancient Egypt, made from meteoritic iron, and shaped thousands of years before iron became common in tools. They were not ploughshares or axes, they were ornaments, intimate and close to the body. Think of that. The first iron many people wore may have rested against skin, not in the hand as a weapon. You see a craftsperson seated in filtered daylight, patiently hammering a tiny piece of sky metal into a bead. The sound is quiet, a careful tick, tick, tick around them. The room smells of dust, linen, oil, and sun-baked mud brick. The metal is difficult. Meteoritic iron can be hammered, but it is not endlessly forgiving. Too much force can crack it. Too little does nothing useful. The craftsperson learns by touch. They anneal it by heating and cooling. They shape it slowly. Their fingers ache. Their eyes narrow. A bead emerges, small enough to vanish between finger and thumb, yet powerful enough to carry meaning across thousands of years. There is something deeply human in choosing beauty first. Given a rare, heavenly material, people did not immediately turn every piece into a practical tool. They made status objects, ritual items, decorations, and precious blades. Of course they did. If the sky hands you metal, you do not start with a door hinge. You make something that tells everyone at dinner, politely but clearly, that your family has excellent cosmic connections. In Egypt, iron was sometimes associated with the heavens, and later texts used language that can be understood as linking iron with the sky. The famous dagger buried with Tutankhamun was made from iron containing nickel, strongly suggesting meteoritic origin. Picture it resting in a royal tomb, wrapped in silence, its blade dark and elegant. Around it, gold blazes, blue glass glows, and carved objects crowd the chamber. Gold may dazzle the eye, but iron from a meteor carries a stranger glamour. Gold belongs to the earth's glittering skin. Meteoric iron arrives like a visitor, You're beside a royal workshop now, though the noise is softened by distance. Hammers tap, charcoal breathes in clay basins, sand shifts under sandals. The smell is a mixture of sweat, resin, metal, and warmed stone. An artisan handles a blade not as a common tool, but as a rare body of power. The edge may not be better than later steel, not by any sensible modern measure, but sense is not the only currency humans spend. Symbol matters, origin matters. The story of an object can cut almost as deeply as the object itself. Meteoric iron appeared in other parts of the world too, in Mesopotamia, Anatolia, the Arctic, Africa, and the Americas. Iron meteorites could be found, traded, revered, and worked when conditions allowed. In Greenland, Inuit communities famously used iron from the Cape York meteorite to make cutting edges, tools, and harpoon parts, cold hammering fragments of sky metal in a landscape of ice, wind, and bone. You hear that world differently. Not desert silence, but the low rush of polar air, the creak of snow, the rasp of stone on metal. The metal is touched by gloved hands, its chill almost biting through skin. Here is the quirky tidbit, and it is wonderfully odd some meteorites show a crystalline pattern inside, now called the Widmanstätten pattern, when cut, polished, and etched. Ancient people would not have seen it in the modern laboratory sense, but imagine the possibility of a rare, broken surface showing strange internal geometry, like frost trapped in metal. No wonder sky iron could feel enchanted. Ordinary stone does not usually carry secret architecture that looks as if the stars signed it on the inside. Yet caution belongs here, soft as a hand on the shoulder. Not every ancient iron object was meteoritic. Not every story of heavenly metal can be proven. Some traditions are poetic, some archaeological, some chemical, and some sit uneasily between all three. Historians still argue whether certain early references to iron describe actual meteoritic material, symbolic language, traded curiosities, or later memories folded into older tale. The past, being very inconsiderate, didn't label every artifact with a tidy note saying, "Yes, this fell from space on a Tuesday." You walk now through a trading place near a river crossing. The water moves with a dark, steady sound. Reeds click in the breeze, donkeys stamp and snort, baskets smell of dates, wool, leather, and grain. People bring beads, shells, copper pins, salt, lapis, amber, and stories. Among them, perhaps wrapped in cloth, is a small iron object. It may travel farther than the person who shaped it. It may pass from hand to hand, gathering rumours as it goes. Rarity makes value, but mystery makes value glow. A copper tool can be impressive. A gold ornament can be magnificent. But an iron bead said to come from the sky has an entirely different social flavour. It is not just wealth. It is contact with the unreachable. It says that someone touched what everyone else only watched burning above them. The making of such objects requires careful judgment. The craftsperson must know how the metal moves under hammer blows. They must control heat without melting it away or ruining its structure. They must work with small quantities, because meteorites are gift without a supply chain. There is no dependable mine, no organised industry, no cartloads of ore, only fragments, only accidents, only the occasional heavy stone that does not belong. You feel the strangeness of that economy. Imagine being a maker whose raw material depends on the sky's bad aim. One season, nothing. Another season, perhaps a rumour from a herder, a black stone found after a storm, a heavy lump near a crater, a piece carried from far away by traders who have already tripled the price because, honestly, who is going to argue with sky metal? The social life of meteoritic iron was probably limited, but its imaginative life was enormous. It taught people that iron could exist as metal, not merely as coloured mineral or stubborn rock. It showed a material with unusual weight, toughness, and sound. It gave artisans a rare chance to work iron without first solving the demanding puzzle of smelting. In that sense, meteoric iron was a preview, a whisper of a future technology, delivered in pieces too small and too sacred to build a civilization from. Still, these pieces mattered. They sat in graves, they adorned bodies, they entered royal collections. They became blades that carried prestige beyond their practical use. They travelled inside myth. They made iron desirable before iron was common. Now the settlement is quiet again. Night presses gently around walls and tents. The stars return to their ordinary stillness, as if they have not been throwing metal at the planet for ages. You sit near a cooling hearth, holding a bead no larger than a seed. Its surface is dark, smooth, and cool. It has crossed an unimaginable distance, survived fire in the sky, struck the earth, passed through human hands, and become an ornament against living skin. The sound around you softens. A goat shifts in sleep. Wind moves dust along the threshold. Somewhere, someone dreams of a bright line falling through darkness. In this age, iron is still rare enough to feel like a rumour. It is not yet the everyday metal of farmers, soldiers, builders, and cooks. It is a visitor, a sacred fragment, a strange treasure with the night sky still clinging to it. You close your fingers gently around the cold bead, and for a moment, the heavens feel near enough to hold. You enter the workshop at the hour when night is losing its grip, but the sun has not yet decided to be useful. The air is blue and cold outside, while inside the shelter it is thick with warmth, smoke, and the sour, sweet smell of charcoal. Clay walls hold the heat. Ash lies soft underfoot. A rooster complains somewhere beyond the doorway, as if offended that humans have chosen to improve civilization before breakfast. In front of you stands a small furnace, not much taller than a seated person. It is built of clay, stone, and stubborn hope. Its sides are rough and cracked from old firings. The surface feels dry and gritty beneath your hand, still faintly warm from the work of yesterday. At its base is a small opening where air can enter, and beside it lie tools that seem humble enough: baskets of charcoal, lumps of roasted ore, clay pipes, wooden tongs, stone hammers, and a pair of bellows made from hide. Nothing here looks like a grand invention. No polished laboratory, no shining machinery, just mud, fire, breath, sweat, and a great deal of guessing. Yet this is where iron begins to stop being a strange treasure and starts becoming a human craft. You kneel beside a basket of ore. The pieces are dark red, brown, and black, cracked into manageable chunks. Someone has already roasted them in an open fire to drive away moisture and make them easier to break. They smell dusty and metallic, with a faint bitterness that catches at the back of the throat. When you rub one piece between your fingers, it leaves a dull stain. It is not beautiful like gold. It does not wink in the light. It sits there like a rude little problem. The smelter does not mind. The smelter has patience. A layer of charcoal goes into the furnace first, then ore. Then more charcoal is layer by layer. The shaft fills. Someone lights the fire from below, coaxing flame through the fuel until it glows orange. At first, the sound is soft, a crackle, a hiss, a dry settling of fuel. Then the bellows begin. Woof! Pause! Woof! Pause. The hide bags breathe for the furnace. Air rushes through a clay pipe called a tuyere, feeding the fire until it grows brighter and hungrier. Heat presses against your face. Your eyes water. Sweat gathers under your tunic, then cools unpleasantly whenever you shift away from the furnace mouth. The atmosphere is close and smoky, full of focus. Nobody wastes words. Fire is already doing enough talking. A mainstream fact rests here. Glowing at the centre of the work, early iron, smelting usually did not melt iron into liquid metal. The furnace could not reach the high temperature needed to melt pure iron completely. Instead, It reduced iron ore chemically, using carbon monoxide from hot charcoal to pull oxygen away from the ore. What formed inside was a bloom, a spongy mass of iron mixed with slag. It looked nothing like a clean ingot. It looked, to be honest, like a dirty metallic bread loaf that had lost a fight. Still, it was iron. The process is delicate. Too little heat, and the ore remains stubborn stone. Too much disorder, and the furnace chokes. Too little air, and the fire sulks. Too much air, and the charcoal vanishes too quickly. The workers listen and watch. They judge by colour, sound, smell, and the way heat moves across the skin. A good smelter reads flame the way a sailor reads wind. You lean closer, careful not to breathe the smoke too deeply. The furnace glows through its cracks, tiny red lines pulsing like veins. Charcoal collapses inside with soft sighs. Sparks leap from the top, the bellows keep working, and the person operating them falls into a rhythm that becomes almost musical. Push, release, push, release. The shoulders ache, the hands stiffen, the leather creaks, the furnace inhales. It's easy to imagine technical knowledge as something written in books, but here knowledge lives in bodies. It lives in the ache of the bellows workers' arms. It lives in the smelter's squint. It lives in the memory of which clay cracks, which charcoal burns evenly, which ore gives a better bloom, and which apprentice should not be trusted near anything hotter than soup. Hours pass. The workshop fills with heat. Outside, the morning ripens. Inside, you smell burning charcoal, clay dust, damp leather, and human effort. The fire's roar deepens whenever the air blast strengthens. Now and then, slag begins to gather, a molten waste rich with impurities. It can be tapped from the furnace, oozing out in dark, glassy streams that glow red in the dimness. It hardens into rough lumps, heavy and strange, sometimes shining with surfaces that look like frozen night. Here is a quirky tidbit. Not quite mainstream in its meaning, but endlessly intriguing in several ironworking cultures. Slag heaps became places of local stories, taboos, and even quiet fear. People saw strange glassy waste spilling from furnaces, heard roaring fire, watched earth turn into metal, and decided that smiths were perhaps not entirely ordinary. Fair enough. If your neighbour can make rock bleed black glass and then beat a usable tool out of the furnace's belly, you may naturally wonder whether he is invited to normal village meetings. Across parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia, smiths were sometimes treated as specialists with ritual authority, social separation, or a hint of danger around them. Not everywhere, and not always in the same way, but often enough to reveal something important. Ironmaking was tactile, yes, but it was also theatrical. It transformed matter in ways that seemed alive. Ore went in dull and cold. Fire roared, smoke rose, slag flowed. A bloom emerged, then hammering made it stronger. To people living close to the land, this was not merely manufacturing. It was a drama of earth, breath, and flame. The furnace burns on. At last, the smelter decides the moment has come. The front of the furnace is opened, or part of the structure is broken away, depending on the design. Heat rolls out like an invisible wall. You step back, your cheeks sting. The smell intensifies, sharp and mineral, mixed with ash and hot clay. Using long tools, the workers drag out a glowing mass. It is lumpy, ragged, and bright in places, surrounded by clinging slag. The bloom lands on a prepared surface with a heavy thud. Immediately, hammers rise. The sound changes the whole workshop. No longer breath and roar, now strike and answer. Hammers fall on the hot bloom, squeezing out slag, welding pieces together, compacting the spongy iron. Sparks scatter like fireflies with anger issues. The bloom resists. It squashes, cracks, folds, and slowly becomes denser. The workers reheat it, hammer it again, and repeat the punishment with admirable commitment. Iron does not become useful because humans politely ask. Iron becomes useful because humans are persistent and slightly unreasonable. You feel each blow in your ribs. The ground trembles faintly. The hammer handles are smooth from hands, warm with use, sticky with sweat. A worker turns the bloom with tongs, exposing another side to the blows. Slag spits out in dark flakes. The smell of hot metal grows cleaner as waste is driven away. Bit by bit, a bar begins to appear. It is not perfect. Early wrought iron can vary greatly in quality. Some pieces are fibrous with slag inclusions. Some are soft. Some are surprisingly tough. Some contain patches of carbon and edge toward steel, without anyone fully controlling that transformation. The difference between success and failure may depend on ore type, furnace shape, fuel, airflow, weather, timing, and local knowledge passed from one tired human to another. Historians still argue whether iron smelting began in one main region and spread through trade and migration, or whether several communities discovered the process independently in different landscapes. The evidence is complicated. Furnaces decay. Slag survives, but can be hard to date. Myths exaggerate. Tools travel. Techniques hide inside craft traditions. The past leaves clues, then politely wanders off before explaining itself. You step outside for air. The morning has become bright. Smoke from the furnace drifts upward and carries a bitter charcoal smell across the settlement. Children watch from a careful distance. A woman carrying water pauses, glances toward the workshop, and continues. Goats chew with total indifference to technological revolution, which feels disrespectful but very on brand for goats. Around the workshop, the practical world waits. A farmer wants a stronger blade for clearing brush. A carpenter wants a tougher adze. A hunter wants a point that will not snap as easily as stone. A household wants a knife that can be sharpened again and again. The bloom in the workshop is not yet any of these things, but it is on its way. You return to the shade and see the bar reheated, hammered, and drawn longer. The smith's face shines with sweat. Soot darkens the lines around the eyes. Every movement is measured. Heat must be kept high enough for shaping, but not so wild that the metal burns. Hammer blows must land with rhythm, not panic. Even the silence between strikes matters. The furnace, now cooling, looks almost tired. Its clay sides are cracked wider. Ash spills around its base. Bits of slag glitter in the dirt. A small black feather of charcoal drifts down and breaks under your foot with a soft crunch. You touch the handle of a hammer and feel the warmth left by the worker's grip. In this smoky place, iron has become a collaboration. Earth provides ore, trees provide charcoal, clay provides the chamber, hide and hands provide breath, fire provides transformation, human patience provides everything else. The metal is no longer only found by luck, carried by trade, or wrapped in ore. It can be made, not easily, not cheaply, not cleanly, but made. The bar cools slowly near the edge of the forge. Its surface is dark, rough, and modest. It does not shine with royal glamour. It does not pretend to be heavenly. It simply rests there, dense and real, holding the memory of heat inside its body. You listen as the final hammer blow fades. The workshop settles into a smoky quiet. Outside, life continues in small, ordinary sounds, water poured into a jar, sandals on packed earth, wind moving through dry grass. Inside, the furnace has learned to breathe, and rock has become metal in human hands. You step onto a road pressed hard by wheels, hooves, and countless human feet. Dawn lifts slowly over a dry plain, turning the dust pale gold. The air carries the smell of barley fields, donkey sweat, cooking smoke, and the faint metallic tang from a roadside workshop where a smith has already begun tapping at a blade. The sound travels strangely in the cool morning ring. Pause. Ring. Pause. As if the whole settlement is waking to the rhythm of iron. Here, iron is no longer only a wonder of rare specialists. It begins to move. You walk with traders leading pack animals loaded with cloth, oil, salt, pottery, timber, copper, grain, and bars of dark metal wrapped in rough fibre. The animals snort and complain under their loads. Flies gather at their ears. Leather straps creak. Wheels groan over stones. The road is not smooth, because apparently the ancient world believed travel should also exfoliate the soul. But the road connects farms, towns, temples, ports, palaces, and camps. Along these routes, iron travels not just as objects, but as knowledge. The mainstream historical fact is plain and powerful. From roughly the early 1st millennium BCE, iron tools and weapons became increasingly common across many regions of the Near East, Mediterranean, South Asia, and beyond, helping societies expand agriculture, warfare, construction, and trade. The spread was uneven. Some places adopted iron quickly. Others used bronze, stone, wood, and bone alongside iron for a long time. But little by little, the heavy dark metal entered ordinary systems of power. You pass a field where farmers are turning soil with iron-tipped tools. The earth is damp from recent rain, rich and dark beneath the pale crust. You hear oxen breathing, wooden yokes creaking, and the dull scrape of a plough point biting into ground that would have mocked softer tools. The smell is beautiful in a quiet way: wet soil, crushed roots, animal hide, and human effort. A farmer's hands are calloused around the plough handle. The wood is smooth where generations have gripped it. The iron point at the end is small, practical, and utterly world-changing. Iron did not magically make every farm abundant. Ancient farming remained hard, risky, and dependent on weather, labour, storage, and politics. But tougher tools could open heavier soils, clear woodland, shape irrigation works, repair carts, cut reeds, harvest grain, and maintain the 1,000 small tasks that keep a village alive. Iron's empire began not only in battle, but in the stubborn patience of fields. You kneel at the edge of a furrow and press your fingers into the freshly opened soil. It is cool, crumbly, and alive with the smell of roots. A child nearby gathers stones tossed up by the plough. An older woman ties bundles of cut brush with practiced speed. Someone sharpens a sickle blade against a stone, and the rasping sound is soft, steady, almost sleepy. This is civilization in its less dramatic clothing. No trumpets, no palace murals, just work that must be done again tomorrow, and the day after that, and yes, again, because grain has no respect for weekends. Iron changes the scale of that work. A stronger axe can clear trees, a better hoe can work compacted ground. Nails and clamps can hold carts, doors, wheels, and beams together more securely. A sharper knife can cut meat, fibre, leather, reeds, and wood. The empire of iron is made of small improvements repeated endlessly. Yet kings notice it too. You approach a fortified city with mud brick walls rising above the plain. The gates are thick, shadowed, and busy. Guards lean on spears. Merchants haggle beneath awnings. Potters shout at apprentices. Soldiers move through this gate in ordered lines, bronze and iron mixed among their equipment. The atmosphere hums with ambition and dust. Somewhere inside, scribes record deliveries. Someone must count how much grain, how many sheep, how many spearheads, how many labourers. Empires adore counting. It lets them pretend the world is less chaotic than it is. Iron becomes part of state power because armies need tools as much as weapons. They need axes for cutting timber, picks for digging, nails for carts, fittings for harnesses, blades for clearing roads, and metal parts for siege works, spears, swords, arrowheads, and armour matter, of course. But an army is also a moving village with sharper opinions. It eats, builds, repairs, digs, carries, and complains. You watch a military smith at work near a barracks courtyard. The smell is intense charcoal, sweat, hot scale, sour wine, and boiled lentils from a nearby pot. Hammer blows strike faster here, less ceremonial, more urgent. A spearhead is drawn, reheated, straightened, and quenched with a hiss that sends steam into your face. The heat kisses your skin even from a safe distance. The smith does not look heroic. The smith looks tired. History often depends on tired people doing skilled work while leaders take the credit. Gentle little surprise there. The Assyrian Empire, among others, became famous for organised military force, administrative reach, and large-scale use of iron weapons and tools. Its armies moved through the ancient Near East with frightening efficiency. But iron alone did not create empire. Discipline, logistics, horses, roads, siege technology, taxation, political ruthlessness, and administrative systems mattered enormously. Iron helped supply the machine. It did not invent ambition. Humans managed that all by themselves, with considerable enthusiasm. You pass through a market street where iron is both valuable and ordinary. A vendor displays knives, awls, hooks, pins, chisels, and simple fittings. Some pieces are rough, some are well finished. Customers test edges with cautious thumbs. A carpenter lifts a chisel and squints at its tip. A woman examines a cooking knife, weighing durability against price. The air smells of bread, fish sauce, wool dye, dung, incense, and metal dust. It is not glamorous, but it is alive. A quirky tidbit clings to the reputation of early iron. Some ancient traditions treated particular iron objects as almost magical protection against spirits, misfortune, or the evil eye. In later folklore across parts of Europe and Asia, iron nails, knives, horseshoes, and blades could guard thresholds, cradles, or stables. These beliefs are later and varied, not simple proof of ancient imperial religion, but they preserve an old emotional truth. Iron felt forceful. It resisted. It cut. It sparked. It came from heat and earth. If you were going to ask a material to scare away invisible nuisances, iron had the right personality. The spread of iron also changes trade. Copper and tin, the ingredients of bronze, are not evenly distributed. Tin in particular could require long-distance exchange networks. Iron ore is more widely available in many regions, though turning it into good metal still demands skill, fuel, and organisation. This matters. When more communities can access workable iron locally or regionally, dependence on certain elite trade routes may shift. The old bronze world does not vanish overnight, but the balance of materials changes. You stand beside a river port where boats bump gently against wooden posts. Water slaps the hulls, ropes smell of wet fibre, fish scales glitter on the planks. Men unload sacks and metal bars while scribes press marks into tablets or scratch records on perishable surfaces that time will rudely eat. Iron moves by cart, boat, caravan, and gift. It moves as tribute. It moves as loot. It moves in the hands of migrants, smiths, mercenaries, and captives. Technologies travel with people, and people rarely travel empty of memory. Some specialists continue to dispute how far iron's expansion was driven by the collapse of late Bronze Age trade networks, and how far it came from long experimentation already underway in many regions. The old idea that iron suddenly replaced bronze because bronze supplies failed is too simple. Bronze remained useful. Iron was not always superior in early forms. Quality varied. A poor iron blade could bend or dull. A fine bronze blade could still be excellent. The story is not a clean victory parade. It is a messy adoption, region by region, workshop by workshop, field by field. That messiness makes it more human. You travel eastward in imagination, towards South Asia, where iron tools become part of expanding agriculture, forest clearance, and new political formations. You sense humid air, monsoon clouds gathering over dark green land, and the smell of wet leaves, cattle, rice fields, and smoke. Iron axes and plough parts help communities transform landscapes, though always with local differences. Forest edges recede, settlements grow, kingdoms compete, ritual life, trade, and labour adjust around changing tools. You travel westward and northward too, where iron works its way into Greek, Celtic, and later Roman worlds. In hill forts, farmsteads, ports, and camps, iron becomes the practical companion of expansion. Roman power, when it rises, will depend not simply on swords, but on iron nails, clamps, tools, chains, agricultural implements, mining equipment, and the repair culture of a vast imperial system. A road is not only stone, it is picks, chisels, carts, fittings, shoes for animals, and endless maintenance. Empire is glamorous only from a distance. Up close, it is paperwork and broken wheels. You pause near a frontier camp as evening falls. Soldiers boil grain in a pot. A mule shakes its head and jingles metal fittings. Someone mends a strap. Someone sharpens a short blade. Smoke lies low over the ground, mixing with the smell of beans, leather, damp wool, and iron filings. The sky turns violet. A guard's spearhead catches the last light for one brief second, then goes dark. Iron has spread into the structure of ordinary authority. A ruler can demand taxes more effectively when farms produce more. Armies can campaign farther when tools maintain roads and supply lines. Builders can raise heavier doors, stronger carts, sturdier locks. Villages can make and repair more of what they need. Trade can carry bars, blades, and techniques into new hands. The metal does not erase hunger, inequality, fear, or exhaustion. It often deepens them when power uses it harshly, but it expands what organized societies can do. You feel this as a pressure in the landscape. Fields widen, roads lengthen, markets grow louder, forts rise on hills, workshops burn later into the night. The sound of iron becomes part of the daily atmosphere, a hammer at sunrise, a wheel, rim on stone, a knife on a whetstone, a gate hinge groaning in the dark. Now you stand outside the city wall while the last carts enter. Dust settles against your ankles. The road is warm from the day. In the distance, a forge sends one thin thread of smoke into the sky. You can taste ash at the back of your tongue. Somewhere inside the gate, an iron latch falls into place with a small, certain click. It is not a loud sound. It is not the sound of a battle, coronation, or conquest, but it is the sound of a world becoming harder, more connected, more organized, and more demanding. Iron has entered the bloodstream of empire, not as a single miracle, but as tools, weapons, records, roads, farms, carts, markets, and hands that know how to keep working when the fire is low. You arrive at a village forge tucked beside a muddy lane, where the morning air is still pale and cool, and smoke slips from a low roof in slow grey ribbons. Chickens scratch near the threshold. A dog sleeps in a patch of weak sunlight, twitching as if dreaming of heroic battles with table scraps. The lane smells of damp straw, dung, wood smoke, and fresh bread rising somewhere behind a cottage wall. Beneath it all is the sharper scent of hot iron, dry scale, and charcoal. You step inside. The forge is dim at first. Your eyes adjust to a room of packed earth, blackened beams, hanging tools, and a hearth glowing like a small red cave. Heat touches your face immediately, soft at the edges but fierce near the fire. The air is thick, not unpleasant exactly, but heavy with work. You hear the bellows creak, the coals whisper, the hammer strike, the anvil answer. Ring, ring, ring. Each blow lands with a clear note that seems to travel through your ribs. The blacksmith stands in a leather apron darkened by sweat and sparks. Their hands are rough, scarred, and steady. Nothing about the place is delicate. Yet everything depends on precision. A bar of iron is pulled from the coals, its tip glowing orange-yellow. The smith holds it with tongs and places it across the anvil. The hammer rises, the metal bends. This is iron's quiet kingdom, not only palaces, armies, and monuments, but hinges, nails, ploughshares, cooking hooks, knives, buckles, locks, chains, cart fittings, horseshoes, sickles, axes, and all the small stubborn objects that keep life from falling apart. A mainstream historical fact belongs here in many pre-industrial communities. The blacksmith was one of the most essential craft workers, because iron tools needed constant making, sharpening, to mending and adapting for local use. You watch a farmer enter carrying a broken plough point wrapped in sacking. Mud clings to the metal. The farmer smells of rain, cattle, and field grass. He lays the piece near the hearth with the tired dignity of someone presenting a very boring tragedy. Without that plough point, soil turns badly. Without mending, planting slows. Without planting, hunger begins its patient knocking. The smith examines the break, grunts, and sets to work. There is no drama in the grand sense, no crowned ruler, no ceremonial trumpet, just a tool that must return to the field. Yet this repair has weight. The village calendar depends on iron, sowing, reaping, milling, roofing, carting, cooking, locking, building up, and butchering all lean on objects shaped in this smoky room. A broken hinge can ruin a door, a dull blade can waste a day, a missing nail can delay a roof. History loves great events, but ordinary people mostly want the gate to close properly and the soup pot to hang without falling into the fire. You move closer to the anvil. It's smooth on top, chipped along the edges, cold at one end and warm near the work. When the hammer lands, you feel a faint vibration through your palm resting on a nearby beam. The sound is bright, then gone. Sparks jump from the metal and vanish in the dust like tiny orange insects. The forge is also a place of conversation. People come not only for tools, but for news. A shepherd asks about a lost lamb. A traveller mentions a washed-out road. A woman brings a knife that will not hold its edge and adds, with impressive calm, that her husband tried to sharpen it on a doorstep. The smith gives the blade a look that suggests this was a crime against both metal and common sense. Gentle sarcasm belongs naturally in a forge. Iron tolerates many things, but not foolish handling. You notice the variety of work. A long nail begins as a heated rod, drawn thinner by repeated blows, squared, pointed, cut, then headed with swift hammer taps. One nail is simple. 100 nails become a roof, a chest, a wagon, a ship plank, a door. The smith does not make civilization in one glorious strike. The smith makes it one practical piece at a time. Beside the hearth, an apprentice pumps the bellows. The rhythm is slow and physical. Air feeds the coals until they brighten. The apprentice's arms must ache, but the work continues. The smell of charcoal thickens. A bead of sweat rolls down the smith's temple and leaves a pale line through soot. The whole room breathes with the fire inhale through the bellows, exhale in heat. In the corner sits a water trough. Its surface is dark, reflecting firelight in trembling strips. When hot iron enters, the water screams softly, steam rising with a mineral smell. Quenching can harden some iron and steel, depending on carbon content and treatment. though ordinary wrought iron behaves differently from high-carbon steel. Craft workers learn these distinctions through practice long ahead of full chemical theory. They learned by colour, by spark, by fracture, by the way a file bit into the surface, by whether a blade bent, chipped, or survived the customer's next bad idea. A quirky tidbit wanders in with the smoke in parts of rural folklore. The blacksmith was believed to hold unusual protective power, not only because of strength, but because they commanded fire, iron, and transformation. Some tales made smiths healers, charm makers, or figures able to repel troublesome spirits. Even horseshoes over doors, in later tradition, carried a protective reputation. Is a curved piece of hoof hardware really a spiritual security system? Possibly not. But it is very human to trust the object that survives mud, hooves, sparks, and weather. The smith's social place could be complicated. In some communities, smiths were respected and central. In others, they were set apart, feared, restricted by caste, guild, lineage, or taboo. Scholars continue to debate how much this mixed reputation came from economic importance, ritual symbolism, control of dangerous heat, or the practical secrecy of specialized craft. The answer changes by region, century, and culture. A forge in West Africa, a smithy in medieval Europe, a village workshop in South Asia, and a mountain forge in Japan do not all carry the same meanings. Iron travels widely, but it never becomes culturally identical. You watch the repaired plough point take shape. The broken area is heated, worked, and reinforced. Scale flakes from the surface, thin and black. The smith brushes it away. The piece returns to the coals, then to the anvil, then to the coals again. Work moves in cycles heat. Strike, judge, turn, heat, strike. The rhythm becomes soothing, almost like breathing slowed into metal. Outside, the village brightens as you hear a cartwheel grind over stones, children laughing near a well, geese expressing opinions nobody requested. The forge doorway frames little scenes of everyday life, a woman carrying a basket of greens, a boy leading a donkey, an old man leaning on a staff with an iron tip. Every life passing by touches iron somehow. A belt buckle, a cooking hook, a sickle, a key, a needle, a latch. The key draws your eye. On a wooden peg hangs a cluster of iron keys, dark and heavy. Locks and keys change private life. They create guarded spaces, chests, storerooms, gates, rooms, treasuries. They speak of property, trust, fear, and control. A lock is not just metal. It is a social opinion. It says, "This is mine. Please do not be creatively curious." Iron made that opinion stronger. Nearby, a carpenter tests a new chisel. The edge bites into wood with a soft, satisfying curl. The smell of fresh shavings rises, sweet and clean, cutting through smoke. Iron helps shape wood, and wood supports ironwork in return as charcoal, handles, wheels, beams, and bellows frames. Materials cooperate in village life. Stone sharpens iron. Iron cuts wood. Wood feeds fire. Fire changes metal. Hands guide all of it. You begin to sense that the forge is less a shop than a village heartbeat. Not the only one, of course. The mill, the well, the oven, the field, and the hearth all matter. But the forge has a special sound. People hear it and know that work is possible. A silent forge may mean rest, festival, illness, shortage, or trouble. A ringing forge means repair is underway. The farmer receives the mended plough point. He turns it in his hands, feeling the new strength along the worked edge. It is warm still, wrapped in cloth. He nods, pays in coin, grain, labour, or obligation depending on the local economy, and steps back into the lane. The tool will return to soil. The soil will receive seed. The seed may become bread. The bread will feed the smith who repairs the tool. Around and around it goes, a circle as practical as it is profound. The forge settles for a moment. The smith drinks from a cup, wipes soot from the wrist, and looks toward the next job waiting by the wall. A cracked pot hook, a bent wagon tire, 3 knives, a hinge, and a small iron ring whose owner insists it is urgent. It probably is not urgent. It is always urgent when it is yours. You stand in the warm dimness and listen. The fire clicks softly. The bellows hang still. Dust floats in the beam of light entering through the doorway. Your skin smells faintly of smoke now. Your fingertips feel dry from heat. The atmosphere is calm, but never idle. Iron here is not abstract progress. It is maintenance, patience, muscle, memory, and the humble art of keeping daily life usable. The hammer rises again, the anvil sings. Outside, the village moves on, held together by bread, weather, gossip, and 1,000 pieces of iron shaped by firelit hands. You stand beside a forge where the fire is no longer merely bright, but almost white at its heart. The room is low, shadowed, and close, with clay walls blackened by years of smoke. Heat presses against your cheeks like an open hand. Your eyes sting. Your tongue tastes ash. Charcoal snaps in the hearth with small dry sounds, while the bellows breathe in a deep, patient rhythm. A smith lifts a narrow bar from the coals. At first glance, it is simply iron. Dark, stubborn, useful iron. But hidden inside its glowing body is a question that will trouble craftworkers for centuries. How do you make it harder without making it brittle? Sharper without making it fragile? Flexible without making it soft as a sleepy noodle? The answer is steel, though nobody here explains it with neat diagrams or cheerful chemistry labels. Steel is iron with enough carbon to change its character. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to turn plain metal into something with a sharper destiny. Simple, yes, except not simple at all. You watch the smith judge the colour of the bar. Orange, yellow, almost white. In this world, colour is measurement. Sparks are information. Sound is evidence. The metal speaks through glow, resistance, and fracture. The smith listens with the whole body, not with a notebook. The air smells of burning fuel, hot scale, singed hair, sweat, and damp clay. A hammer waits on the anvil, its handle polished by palms. When you touch the wooden grip, it feels warm and slightly slick. The mainstream historical fact is clear steel is an alloy of iron and carbon, and its properties depend greatly on carbon content and heat treatment. A small change can mean a blade that keeps an edge, a spring that flexes, or a tool that fails at the worst possible moment, which is exactly when tools enjoy being dramatic. Ancient smiths did not know atomic structure, yet many learned practical methods for controlling carbon through experience. You lean closer as the smith buries a piece of iron in a sealed clay container packed with charcoal. This technique, in one form or another, can allow carbon to enter the iron surface during prolonged heating. The process is slow. It needs time, fuel, and careful judgment. There is no sudden miracle. There is waiting, checking, reheating, and trying not to ruin the work. The container glows in the furnace like a small sun trapped in mud. Outside, rain begins to fall, and you hear it ticking on the roof, soft and steady. The damp air sneaks through cracks and meets the forge heat, making the room feel even thicker. Steam curls from wet boots near the doorway. The atmosphere becomes dreamy and heavy, half storm, half furnace. You breathe slowly, though not too deeply, because smoke is not exactly a spa treatment, no matter how atmospheric it looks by firelight. The smith removes another blade from the hearth and lowers it into water. The hiss is sudden and sharp. Steam rises against your face, warm and mineral-scented. This is quenching. It can harden steel by locking its internal structure into a more rigid form, but if the steel is too hard, it may crack or shatter. So the smith may heat it again more gently, tempering it to reduce brittleness. The old craft vocabulary differs from place to place, but the pattern is familiar: heat, quench, temper, test, and hope nobody important is watching during the failures. The blade is drawn across a stone. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The edge brightens. The smith tests it against horn, leather, or a shaving of wood. You hear the small, clean whisper of a sharp cut. Not a battle sound. Not heroic music. Just a practical sound that says the metal has learned a new behaviour. Steel appears in many traditions, and not through one single tidy path. In some places, smiths carburized wrought iron. In others, they refined high-carbon cast iron into useful steel. In parts of South Asia, crucible steel became famous. This material, often associated with wood steel, was made by heating iron with carbon-rich materials inside sealed crucibles, producing small cakes of high-quality steel. When forged carefully, some could display flowing surface patterns that later fed the legend of Damascus blades. You find yourself in a warm workshop where crucibles sit packed inside a furnace. The air smells of clay, charcoal, leaves, and the faint sweetness of plant matter used in the charge. The furnace roars low and constant. Workers move with ritual patience. They are not guessing wildly. They are following inherited methods, adjusting to ore, fuel, furnace season, and the irritating mood of reality. When the crucible cools, it may contain a steel cake, rounded and dense, its promise hidden under a rough skin. Here is the quirky tidbit: some old recipes for steel making included strange additions, from leaves and wood to bones, shells, or even more dramatic ingredients praised by storytellers. A few legends claim that extraordinary blades were quenched in the bodies of enemies or slaves, which sounds like the kind of tale invented by someone who wanted a sword to seem terrifying at parties. Practical smiths often used water, oil, brine, or other available liquids, because metallurgy already had enough problems without turning the workshop into a horror story. Still, the myths tell you something. Steel gained a reputation beyond usefulness. It felt alive. It could be hard, flexible, patterned, singing, deadly, loyal, treacherous, expensive, and temperamental. People gave great blades names. They passed them through families. They placed them in poems. They swore oaths on them. A blade was not only a piece of metal, it was memory with an edge. Specialists still debate whether the famous patterned blades called Damascus steel in later sources were always made from imported crucible steel. How many regional techniques fed the reputation, and exactly how some lost patterns were produced. The evidence is tricky because names shift. Trade routes blur origins, and old blades are not very talkative unless scientists are allowed to examine them carefully. Even then, the answer may be less romantic than legend and more impressive than legend at the same time. You watch a patterned blade being polished. Its surface, once dull from forging, begins to reveal watered lines, soft waves like smoke trapped under moonlight. The smith rubs with fine abrasives. The room is quiet now except for the slow rasp of polishing and the patter of rain outside. Your fingertips hover near the blade, close enough to feel the coldness that returns as it rests. It seems almost liquid, yet it is hard enough to hold an edge. The pattern is not decoration painted on top. It belongs to the metal's own history of composition, heat, and skilled working. Not all steel is beautiful. Much of it is plain, practical, and excellent. A knife that cuts reeds, a chisel that shapes oak, a spring in a lock, a needle fine enough to pierce cloth, a saw that bites timber, a file that eats softer metal grain by grain. Steel's greatness is often quiet. It sits in the hand and simply works better. You visit a workshop where small tools matter more than famous weapons. A woman making needles draws wire through a plate, pulling the metal thinner and thinner. The sound is faint. almost a squeal. Oil darkens her fingertips. Nearby, a filemaker cuts rows of sharp teeth into a bar with careful blows. The smell is metal filings, lamp smoke, and stale wool. A carpenter tests a steel-edged plane, and pale curls of wood rise from the board, smooth as ribbon. The room feels focused, domestic, industrious. Not every revolution needs a battlefield. Some arrive as sharp as scissors. The secret of steel is also the secret of uneven knowledge. A master smith may know exactly how to produce a strong blade in one workshop, while another maker 50 miles away struggles with brittle metal. Techniques can be guarded within families or guilds. Apprentices learn by watching hands rather than reading formulas. A tiny change in ore or charcoal can ruin a familiar process. Even the water used for quenching may earn a reputation, because if one stream seems to work well, people will absolutely give it mystical branding. Humans adore a special stream. You pick up a failed blade from a scrap pile. It is cracked along one edge. The surface feels rough and slightly sharp under your thumb. It is a reminder that progress includes waste. The beautiful surviving objects can fool you into imagining smooth mastery. But for every admired blade or elegant tool, there were mistakes, warped pieces, overheated edges, bad welds, and smiths staring at broken work with the ancient expression of, well, that was expensive. The forge darkens as evening draws in. The storm has passed, leaving wet earth smells drifting through the doorway. Inside, the hearth still glows. The smith reheats a blade, not to blazing brightness now, but to a subtler colour. This is tempering by eye, straw, brown, purple, blue, shades sliding across the polished surface as heat moves through it. Colour becomes a clock, a moment too long, and the balance changes. The smith lifts it away. You hear the blade ring lightly when tapped, not the dull note of soft iron, not the brittle ping of disaster, but a clean tone. The sound hangs in the smoky room, then fades. Steel is a difficult secret because it is not one thing. It is a range, a balance, a conversation between iron, carbon, heat, cooling, hammering, and use. It can become a razor, spring, chisel, sword, saw, needle, bearing, or quiet kitchen knife. It asks more from the maker than iron does. In return, it gives more back. You stand with your hands near the dying warmth of the forge. Ash drifts down like grey snow. The tools on the wall are only shapes now, dark against darker timber. Somewhere outside, water drips from the roof. The metal on the bench cools slowly, holding inside itself all the decisions of the day: how hot, how long, how fast, how hard, how patient. The blade rests in silence. It looks still, but it carries a hidden structure, delicate and powerful, made by fire and judgment. You breathe in the last smell of charcoal and rain, and the room seems to settle around you like a blanket woven from smoke. Skill, and the quiet satisfaction of a secret partly understood. You wake into a city of smoke. The sky above you is not blue so much as bruised grey, rubbed with soot from chimneys that rise in rows beyond the rooftops. Morning light leaks through the haze in a tired yellow sheet. The air tastes of coal, damp brick, horse sweat, river mud, and hot metal beneath your boots. The street is slick with rain and ash, and every surface seems to carry a faint gritty film. Somewhere nearby, a factory whistle screams, long and impatient, as if the day itself has overslept. You walk toward the sound. The city trembles with iron. Wheels grind on rails. Carts clatter over iron-rimmed stones. Chains rattle at loading docks. Hoists creak. Engines cough. Hammers fall in distant yards with a rhythm so constant it becomes part of the weather. People move quickly through narrow streets, workers with lunch tins, Children carrying bundles, women in shawls, clerks stepping around puddles as if mud were personally insulting them. The whole place feels awake, hungry, and slightly unwell. This is iron in the industrial age, no longer a village helper or royal treasure, but a vast system. A mainstream fact belongs here during the Industrial Revolution. Iron production expanded enormously through new furnace designs, coke fuel, steam power, rolling mills, and large-scale mining, making iron central to railways, bridges, ships, machines, factories, and urban growth. You stand outside an ironworks where heat blooms through open doors. Inside, the noise is almost physical. Massive hammers pound glowing metal. Rolling mills pull bars through turning cylinders, stretching and shaping them with relentless force. Sparks shower across dark floors. Men shout over the machinery, though their words vanish inside the roar. The smell is fierce, coal smoke, hot scale, oil, sweat, wet wool, and the mineral bite of molten slag. You feel the heat on your skin even from the threshold. It dries your lips. It prickles beneath your collar. The ironworkers move with tense familiarity, staying just clear of wheels, belts, hooks, and red-hot pieces that would be very impolite to touch. Nothing here is gentle, except perhaps the strange grace of practiced labour. A glowing bar slides forward like a captured sunset. Tongs seize it. Rollers bite it. The metal lengthens, flattens, and darkens as it cools. Charcoal once fed smaller furnaces in many regions, but industrial iron demanded fuel on another scale. Coke, made by heating coal in limited air, became crucial in Britain's rising production. Abraham Darby's early 18th century use of coke in iron smelting helped open a path toward larger and cheaper iron output. By the 19th century, furnaces, mines, canals, steam engines, and factories were tied together in a smoky web. Progress, naturally, arrived wearing a black coat and coughing. You leave the works and follow a canal where barges sit low in the water loaded with coal and iron. The canal smells of algae, tar, wet rope, and horse manure from the towpath. A barge horse leans into its harness, hooves sinking softly into mud. Chains clink, water laps the bank, the cargo barely moves. Yet its meaning is enormous. Heavy materials need transport. Iron makes engines and rails, but canals, roads, and later railways also carry the iron that makes more engines and rails. Industrial growth folds back on itself, like a machine building the parts of its own appetite. You reach a railway station. Here the atmosphere changes from heavy labour to restless departure. Steam drifts under the iron roof in pale clouds. Glass panes sweat with condensation. Porters shout. Wheels squeal. A child clutches a paper parcel. A woman lifts her skirt above black puddles. A gentleman checks his watch with the solemnity of a priest consulting an oracle. The platform smells of hot oil, coal smoke, damp luggage, oranges, wool, and fear disguised as punctuality. The locomotive waits at the head of the train, black and breathing. Its iron body ticks as it heats. Steam sighs from valves. The firebox glows. The engine seems alive, not in the magical sense, but in the unnerving sense that it has lungs, hunger, bones, and a temper. When it begins to move, the couplings jerk one by one down the train. The wheels turn. Iron grips iron. The rails sing under the weight. Railways compress distance. A journey that once took days by road may now take hours. Food reaches cities faster. Newspapers travel. Troops move. Letters arrive with less heroic delay. Fresh milk, coal, people, ideas, disease, fashion, panic, and gossip all move along iron lines. The countryside does not become smaller, but human expectation does. Once trains exist, slowness begins to feel like a personal failure by the landscape. You sit by a carriage window as the train pulls away. The seat is hard beneath you. Soot flecks drift through the air and land on your sleeve. The engine beats out its rhythm chuff. Chuff, chuff. Faster and stronger. Fields slide past. Then cuttings. Then tunnels, where sound multiplies and smoke presses close. In the dark, passengers fall silent. The carriage smells of coal fumes, leather, wool, and oranges crushed in someone's bag. When daylight returns, everyone pretends they were not slightly alarmed. Rails require iron in enormous quantities, and later steel becomes increasingly important for stronger, longer-lasting track. Iron bridges follow the same bold logic. You stand on the bank of a river and look at an iron bridge stretching across the water. Dark ribs against the pale sky. The structure feels both elegant and stern. Rivets dot the plates like rows of disciplined seeds. The wind moves under the span with a hollow note. Water below smells cold and brown, carrying leaves, mud, and the faint rot of the banks. The iron bridge over the River Severn in England, opened in 1781, became one of the most famous symbols of industrial iron. It showed that cast iron could create large architectural forms, not merely pots, pipes, and machines, of course. Cast iron is strong under compression but brittle under tension, which is a rather important personality flaw when you're asking it to hold up traffic over water. Engineers learned by calculation, experiment, success, and occasional failure. Because bridges are extremely strict teachers, a quirky tidbit belongs to the world of railways and bridges. Early passengers sometimes feared that high train speeds would harm the body or disturb the mind. Some worried that the rush of motion might affect breathing, nerves, or sanity. Looking out a carriage window at fields flying past faster than any horse could carry you, you can almost forgive them. The first experience of industrial speed must have felt unnatural, like being politely kidnapped by physics. You step into a growing industrial city at dusk. Brick terraces stretch in long rows. Iron railings guard narrow steps. Gas lamps flicker. Factory windows glow amber through smoke. Laundry hangs limp in damp courtyards. The ground underfoot is hard and uneven, patched with iron grates and gutters. A drain exhales an odour that suggests urban planning still has homework to do. Iron supports the city in visible and hidden ways. It appears in beams, columns, pipes, stoves, fences, bed frames, tools, locks, cranes, boilers, presses, and machines. Cast iron columns allow larger interior spaces in mills and warehouses. Iron pipes carry water and gas, though not always safely or cleanly. Iron stoves warm rooms and cook meals. Iron bedsteads resist insects better than wooden frames, which is a small but deeply appreciated victory for anyone trying to sleep without becoming a buffet. In a textile mill, iron frames hold spinning machines in long rows, belts turn overhead, floors vibrate beneath your feet. The sound is overwhelming clacking, whirring, thumping, the sharp cries of supervisors, the constant rush of motion. Cotton dust floats in the air and catches in the throat. Oil slicks the machinery. Workers stand close to moving parts, guiding threads, repairing brakes, watching hands near danger all day. Iron here is productivity, but also discipline. Machines set the pace. The body follows. Scholars still debate how much industrialization should be understood as an iron revolution, a coal revolution, a steam revolution, a labour revolution, or a financial and imperial network all moving together. The honest answer is not tidy. Iron mattered enormously, but it did not act alone. Coal-fed furnaces and engines, steam-powered pumps and mills, banks financed expansion, colonies supplied raw materials and markets. Workers gave their time, strength, lungs, and sometimes childhoods. The thunder of industry has many instruments, though iron gives it a very loud percussion section. You watch molten iron poured at a foundry, workers tilt a ladle, and liquid metal flows orange-white into moulds packed in sand. The glow lights faces from below, making everyone look briefly mythic and very tired. The heat is stunning, like opening an oven large enough to roast a cathedral. The metal hisses and snaps. Sand smells scorched. Steam and smoke twist upward. When the moulds cool and break open, wheels, pipes, plates, gears, and machine parts emerge from darkness. There is beauty in the process. Dangerous beauty. Industrial iron is not pretty in the soft sense. It is beautiful like thunderclouds, shipyards, engine pistons, and bridges in fog. It has weight, rhythm, and consequence. Night settles over the city, though the furnaces keep their own red daylight. You stand on a hill and look down at chimneys as rails, rooftops, cranes, and lamps. Trains move like glowing insects along black lines. A factory whistle blows again, lower now, weary and commanding. Somewhere a bridge carries workers home across dark water. Somewhere a boiler sighs. Somewhere a hammer strikes one last piece of hot metal into shape. Your coat smells of smoke. Your hands feel grimy from the railings. Your ears hold the echo of iron wheels and factory floors. The city does not sleep easily. It mutters, exhales, clanks, and glows. Iron has become infrastructure, speed, heat, shelter, work, noise, and restless ambition. It holds the roof above the station, the track beneath the train, the pipe below the street, the frame inside the mill, and the bridge over the river. It has forged a new rhythm for human life, louder than the old field paths, faster than the old roads, and heavy enough to leave soot on the morning sky. You descend before sunrise, when the world above the mine is still cold, colourless, and reluctant to wake. Frost lies in the grass like powdered glass, your breath shows in pale clouds. Around you, men, women, and sometimes children gather near the pit head, boots dark with old mud, shoulders rounded under coats stiff with damp. A bell rings once, flat and tired in the grey air. No one cheers, no one needs a dramatic speech. The earth is open, the day is long, and iron waits below. You step toward the shaft. The smell reaches you first: wet stone, stale water, sweat trapped in wool, lamp oil, and the sour mineral breath of underground places. A rope creaks, chains clatter, a cage lowers with a shudder that travels through your knees. As you descend, daylight shrinks above you until it becomes a small square, then a memory. The air grows colder at first, then strangely close. Drops of water touch your neck. The walls feel slick beneath your fingers, rough in some places, smooth where many hands have brushed past. This is another face of iron, not the ringing tool or proud bridge, but the labour required to pull the metal from darkness. One central historical fact is unavoidable large-scale iron production depended on mining ore, quarrying limestone, cutting or coking fuel, moving heavy materials, and employing vast numbers of workers in difficult and often dangerous conditions. Iron changed civilization, but it didn't lift itself politely from the ground. People dug it, hauled it, washed it, burned fuel for it, smelted it, rolled it, riveted it, and carried its weight in their bones. You walk through a tunnel where lamps flicker along the wall. Every flame is small, trembling, and precious. Picks strike rock with a dull, repeating bite. Clink, scrape, thud. A cartwheel squeals along a rail set into the floor. Someone coughs in the distance. Water drips steadily into a channel, each drop sounding larger underground than it has any right to sound. The atmosphere presses close, as if the mine itself is leaning in to listen. The miners know the rock by texture and sound. Ore seams are not abstract diagrams here. They are bands in the wall, stubborn masses to be broken with muscle, wedges, drills, and later explosives. You run your palm across a piece of ore. It is cold, heavy, and damp, leaving grit on your skin. This stone may become a rail, a rifle barrel, a nail, a stove, a gate, a ship plate. Right now, it is only a burden waiting for someone's back. A young worker pushes a loaded cart. His hands are raw around the knuckles. His boots slide in the mud. The cart resists, because iron ore is deeply committed to being inconvenient. Another worker braces a shoulder against the back, and together they force it forward. The wheels grind. The tunnel swallows the sound. Above ground, the ore will join a wider world of labour. At the furnace yard, men shovel fuel until their arms shake. At the docks, gangs load bars, rails, and plates into ships. At rolling mills, workers handle white-hot metal that punishes hesitation. At armories, machinists bore barrels, cut screws, fit locks, shape bayonets, and inspect parts. Each step turns the Earth's darkness into organised force. You stand now in a weapons workshop where daylight enters through high, dirty windows. The room smells of oil, filings, hot metal, and sawdust. The sound is finer than the mine, but no gentler files rasping. Drills whining, hammers tapping, gauges clicking against finished surfaces. A worker lifts a gun barrel and peers through it toward the light. Another sharpens a blade. Another stamps a part with a mark that will outlive the hand that made it. Iron and steel did not invent war. Humans had been perfectly capable of making trouble with stone, bronze, wood, bone, and bad decisions. But iron and steel changed the scale, durability, and supply of weapons. Stronger barrels, standardized parts, armoured ships, artillery, bayonets, rails for troop movement, telegraph wires on iron poles, and factory production all fed the machinery of modern conflict and empire. The metal that opened fields also opened fortresses. The same stubborn strength that held bridges together could hold cannon in place. You step outside into a yard where crates are stacked under tarred cloth. Rain begins to fall, light at first, then steady. It taps on wooden lids and darkens the mud. The air smells of wet rope, iron hoops, coal smoke, and horses. A clerk checks numbers on a list, scratching with a pen while water beads on his hat brim. The crates may travel to a colonial garrison, a frontier post, a naval depot, or a trading fort. Iron moves inside Empire like a nervous system made of rails, rifles, shackles, tools, ships, and paperwork. That last part matters. Empire is not only flags and speeches, it is logistics. It is a rail line pushed through someone else's land. It is iron survey chains across fields. It is telegraph wire carried on metal fittings. It is a steamship with iron plates arriving at a river mouth. It is a mine concession written in elegant ink while workers prepare to enter the ground. It is a bridge that brings goods out faster than consent ever arrived. Very efficient empire, not always known for asking nicely. In many colonized regions, iron tools and imported steel goods entered complicated local economies. They could be useful, desired, resisted or copied, repaired or repurposed. A machete could clear brush, harvest cane, build a home, or threaten a body. Rails could carry crops to port, soldiers inland, or people away from land they once controlled. Mining could bring wages, coercion, debt, displacement, new towns, and environmental scars. Iron's darkness here is not the metal itself, but the systems that organize hands around it. You walk through a landscape changed by extraction. Hillsides are cut open, trees are gone from slopes where charcoal burning once consumed whole woodlands, or coal pits have swallowed fields into black mouths. Water near the works runs orange-brown, carrying mineral stains. The smell is sharp, sulphurous, muddy, and burnt. Grass grows thin near slag heaps. Wind lifts dust that settles on windowsills. Bread, hair, and sleeping blankets. A child plays near a heap of cooled slag, picking up shiny fragments that glitter green-black in the sun. They look almost beautiful, like broken bottle glass from a dragon's kitchen. Here is the quirky tidbit: the term pig iron comes from old casting beds, where molten iron ran from a central channel into smaller side channels, resembling a sow with piglets. A charming farmyard image for a blazing industrial scene. Humanity looked at rivers of molten metal and somehow thought, yes, adorable livestock, we contain multitudes. You follow the path toward a workers' district. Rows of housing stand close together. Brick walls damp, windows small, alleys narrow. The smell changes from furnace smoke to cabbage, laundry water, coal fires, chamber pots, and rain-soaked clothing. Inside one room, a family sleeps in shifts because the bed must serve those coming off different hours. A metal lunch tin sits on a table. Boots dry badly near the hearth. A woman rubs soot from a child's face with a cloth. Not gently enough for the child's liking, but very efficiently. The touch of iron is everywhere in this room: stove, bed frame, kettle, knife, latch, sewing needle, boot nails, window catch. It comforts and confines. It warms soup, locks doors, holds wages in factory clocks, and marks the hour when bodies must return to labour. You feel the iron latch beneath your thumb as you open the door. It is cold, worn smooth, and ordinary. Ordinary things can carry heavy histories. Historians still argue whether industrial iron and steel should be remembered mainly as engines of liberation through cheaper tools, transport, and construction, or as instruments that intensified exploitation, warfare, and imperial control. The answer, inconveniently for anyone craving simplicity, is both. A rail can bring food during famine, or carry troops to crush resistance. A steel plough can feed a village, or break land taken from another people. A mine can pay wages, or trap a community in dangerous dependence. Iron does not choose its morality. People build systems around it, then act surprised when those systems have consequences. You stand by a naval dock where an ironclad vessel sits low in the water. Rain shines on its dark sides. Hammers echo from within the hull. The river smells of tar, salt, sewage, and coal. Seabirds cry overhead. Their voices thin against the clang of shipbuilding. Iron plates are lifted by cranes, swung slowly, and fixed into place by gangs of workers. Rivets heat in small furnaces, glowing cherry red before they are tossed, caught, placed, and hammered tight. The rhythm is fast, practiced, dangerous. Armoured ships changed the balance of power at sea. They protected trade routes, projected force, and turned distant coasts into reachable targets. They also required industrial bases that many societies were pressured to buy from, work for, or resist. Iron floated, steamed, fired, and governed. The sea, once the realm of wood, sail, and rope, began to echo with engines and metal hulls. At dusk, you return to the mine road. Workers emerge with faces darkened by dust, eyes pale in the lamplight. Their clothes smell of underground damp and sweat. Some walk silently. Some joke with rough, tired humour because laughter, even thin laughter, is cheaper than medicine and sometimes works faster. A lunch tin swings from one hand. A bandaged finger is held close to the chest. Boots leave heavy prints in the mud. The bell rings again. You feel the day settle into your shoulders. Iron has built roads, ships, machines, weapons, locks, tools, roofs, and railways, but its price has often been paid in lungs, backs, forests, rivers, and occupied lands. The metal itself remains quiet. It does not boast from the cart, the crate, the gun barrel, the chain, or the rail. It simply holds the shape it has been given. Night gathers over the works. Furnaces glow beyond the ridge, low and red beneath the smoke. The mine mouth is a darker dark in the hillside. Rain softens the dust to mud. Somewhere. A hammer continues after sunset. One strike, then another, fading into the thick industrial air. You stand still and listen. This sound is not only progress. It is labour, breathing in the dark. You stand at the edge of a scrapyard in the pale wash of morning, where piles of metal rise like strange grey hills under a sky the colour of tin. The air is cool, but not clean. It smells of rainwater trapped in old barrels, oil, rubber, rust, dust, and a faint sharpness from cut steel. Somewhere beyond the fence, traffic hums nearby. A crane turns slowly on its base, its magnet hanging from a cable like a dark moon waiting to choose what deserves to fly. The magnet lowers. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a heap of twisted sheet metal shivers. Loose bolts jump. A bent door panel lifts from the pile with a groan of protest, clinging to other fragments in a clattering bouquet. The sound is harsh, but oddly satisfying clank, scrape, rattle, lift. The crane swings, and the captured scrap moves through the air, dripping rainwater and flakes of orange rust. Iron has become so ordinary here that it almost disappears into usefulness. It hides inside cars, refrigerators, ships, pipes, bridges, washing machines, tools, bolts, beams, train wheels, kitchen knives, hospital beds, screws, elevators, and the quiet studs and fasteners that hold rooms together. Steel is mostly iron, shaped by carbon and other elements into countless forms. That is the mainstream fact resting under the noise steel. An iron-based alloy is one of the defining materials of the contemporary built world because it can be strong, workable, adaptable, and recyclable. You walk between stacks of scrap. Your boots crunch on rust flakes and broken glass. A cold rail of discarded rebar brushes your sleeve, leaving a reddish stain. The texture is rough and powdery, like dry earth mixed with old rain. Rust has a smell too, subtle but real, metallic and damp, like a tool left too long in a shed. It is iron returning to chemistry, bonding with oxygen and moisture, slowly becoming iron oxide again. In a poetic mood, you might say rust is metal remembering the ground. In a less poetic mood, you might say it is why your garden gate looks personally betrayed. Rust is not merely ugliness, it is a process, a slow conversation with air and water. It weakens bridges, eats through pipes, stains stone, freezes bolts, roughens ships, and keeps maintenance workers gainfully annoyed. Engineers fight it with paint, oil, galvanizing, stainless steel alloys, cathodic protection, coatings, drainage, inspection, and the ancient sacred ritual of saying, "That should hold," while secretly hoping it does. You reach a bridge where repair crews have set up barriers. Cars pass with a low continuous rush. Tires whispering over wet pavement. Beneath the roadway, steel beams carry the load. Some surfaces are painted smooth and dark. Others show orange blooms where moisture has found a weakness. A worker taps the metal with a hammer, listening. The note matters. Solid metal sings differently from damaged metal. The air smells of river water, diesel, wet concrete, and paint. Cold mist touches your face. A bridge is not one heroic object. It is a promise renewed by inspection. Every beam, bolt, plate, cable, and joint must endure weather, vibration, salt, traffic, heat, cold, and time. Steel allows bold spans and immense strength, but it does not exempt anyone from care. Civilization, inconveniently, comes with upkeep. The grand romance of infrastructure often turns into a clipboard, a flashlight, and someone lying under a beam in the rain. From the bridge, you move into a city of hidden iron. Skyscrapers rise above you, their glass skins reflecting clouds. Inside, many of them are steel frames, columns, reinforcing bars, brackets, ducts, elevators, and mechanical systems. The lobby smells of polished stone, coffee, floor wax, and recycled air. Your hand touches a stainless steel railing, cool and smooth as water made solid. An elevator door opens with a soft chime, and you step into a box lifted by cables, motors, counterweights, and trust. A surprising amount of city life depends on trust in metal you rarely see. Steel-reinforced concrete carries apartment towers, stadiums, tunnels, highways, and dams. Rebar hides inside grey mass like a skeleton inside stone. Without it, concrete resists compression but struggles with tension. Together, concrete and steel create forms neither could manage alone. You walk past a construction site where workers guide rebar cages into place. The rods are ribbed under the hand, dark with mill scale. They scrape against each other with a dry ringing sound. The air smells of dust, wet cement, sweat, and diesel. A crane beeps in reverse, because even heavy machinery apparently enjoys sounding mildly ridiculous. Not all iron in the modern world is huge. You enter a kitchen at dusk where a steel knife rests beside chopped onions and herbs. A cast iron pan warms on the stove, its black surface seasoned by years of oil, heat, and meals. The room smells of garlic, pepper, steam, and toasted bread. When you lift the pan, its handle is heavy and warm through the cloth. It holds heat with stubborn loyalty. A spoon taps the rim. The sound is domestic, rounded, comforting. Cast iron cookware carries its own folklore. Here is the quirky tidbit: some people treat an old cast iron pan almost like a family elder, never washing it the wrong way, guarding its seasoning, and speaking of it with a seriousness usually reserved for legal documents and beloved pets. There are even myths that a well-seasoned pan is absolutely non-stick forever, capable of defeating all eggs. The truth is gentler. It can be wonderfully slick, but it still appreciates care, heat control, and not being abandoned in a sink like a tragic little shipwreck. Iron also travels through medicine and the body's tools. Surgical instruments often use stainless steel because it can be cleaned, sharpened, and made resistant to corrosion. Hospital beds, wheelchairs, clamps, trays, needles, imaging machines, and structural systems all depend in various ways on iron-based alloys. You stand in a quiet clinical room where the light is soft and white. The air smells of antiseptic, plastic, linen, and faint metal. A tray of instruments gleams under a lamp. Their surfaces are cold, precise, and almost silent. Stainless steel feels modern because it resists rust so well, but its secret is not magic. Chromium in the alloy forms a thin protective layer at the surface. Scratch it, and under the right conditions the layer reforms. Very elegant, very calm, very much the sort of behaviour one wishes certain household appliances would imitate more consistently. You leave the clinic and return to the scrapyard as afternoon light breaks through clouds. Trucks arrive, loaded with crushed cars, old beams, broken appliances, tangled wire, and machine parts. Workers sort, cut, shear, and bundle. A shredder wakes with a roar that you feel in your chest. Metal enters as recognizable objects and emerges as fragments. The smell sharpens hot oil, dust, insulation, rubber, and exposed steel. Sparks flash where cutting torches bite through heavy pieces. Recycling is one of iron's great modern strengths. Scrap steel can be melted and made into new steel, reducing the need for fresh ore and saving energy compared with production from raw materials. Yet it is not a perfect fairy tale with a green bow tied around it. Scrap must be sorted. Coatings, alloys, plastics, and contaminants complicate the process. Energy is still needed, emissions still matter. Some steel uses require careful control of composition. Recycling is powerful, but not effortless. The metal may be willing to return, but humans still have to organize the invitation. You follow scrap into a steel plant using an electric arc furnace. The building is immense, cavernous, and alive with light. Electrodes descend into a vessel charged with metal. Electricity leaps. The furnace flashes white blue, brighter than lightning trapped indoors. The sound is a deep electrical roar mixed with cracking, clanging, and the warning beeps of vehicles moving through the haze. Heat rolls outward. Your face tightens. The atmosphere smells of ozone, hot dust, scorched metal, and protective gear. The charge collapses as it melts. Scrap loses its old identities. Car door, pipe, bolt, washing machine drum, girder, rail, shelf bracket, all become liquid potential. Workers monitor temperature and chemistry. Additions adjust the melt. Samples are tested. The steel is tapped, glowing orange, into a ladle that moves with terrifying grace. Liquid metal pours like sunrise with consequences. Some researchers and industry specialists continue to debate how quickly steelmaking can reduce its climate impact, especially through electric furnaces, hydrogen-based processes, cleaner electricity, carbon capture, improved recycling, and better demand management. The uncertainty is not whether steel matters. It clearly does. The question is how to make such a necessary material with less harm, while still building homes, hospitals, transit, tools, water systems, and all the less glamorous things people need to live. You step back from the furnace floor and imagine the new steel moving outward. Some becomes sheet for appliances. Some becomes beams. Some becomes wire. Some becomes cans, though many cans are now lined, coated, printed, and complicated in their own small ways. Some becomes surgical tools. Some becomes wind turbine towers, subway rails, bicycles, shipping containers, school desks, screws, hinges, and the frame of a bed where someone will someday sleep without ever thinking about ore, furnaces, rust, or scrap. That is iron's modern trick. It surrounds you so completely that it becomes background. Yeah, you notice it mainly when it fails. Stains, bends, jams, squeaks, or costs too much. Yet its reliability is the quiet platform under countless routines. Morning coffee brewed in a machine with steel parts, a train rail shining under commuter wheels, a saucepan on a stove, a key turning in a lock, a ladder rung under one foot, a paperclip holding a note that someone will absolutely lose anyway. Even rust has its place in art and design. Weathering steel, designed to form a stable rust-like surface under suitable conditions, has been used for sculptures, buildings, and bridges. Its orange-brown skin can look warm, earthy, and dignified, as if the metal has chosen aging as an aesthetic career. But it must be used carefully, with the right environment and drainage. Otherwise, dignified patina becomes messy staining, and the building begins quietly redecorating the sidewalk. Evening settles over the scrapyard. The crane lowers its magnet one last time. The captured fragments rise and swing against a violet sky. Their edges catch the light dull silver, orange rust, black paint, chipped enamel, a flash of chrome. The pile below shifts with a tired sigh. You stand still, one hand resting on a cold steel post. It is rough where paint has peeled, smooth where many hands have touched it. Around you, metal is ending one life and preparing for another. It does not mind becoming ordinary again. That may be iron's deepest talent to enter service, decay, return, and serve again in a new shape. The yard grows quiet except for distant engines and a loose sheet tapping in the wind. Tap, Pause. Tap. The smell of rain rises from rusted surfaces. Night gathers in the hollows between stacked metal. In the fading light, the scrap no longer looks like waste. It looks like memory waiting for heat. You sit in a quiet room where the world has softened to low light and slow breathing. Outside, rain taps the window in small patient notes. A lamp glows beside you. Warm on the table, touching the rim of a cup, the edge of a book, the quiet curve of your hand. Somewhere nearby, a radiator clicks, a pipe murmurs, a hinge settles with a tiny metallic sigh. Iron is here, not as spectacle, not as thunder, but as presence. You do not need to search for it very far. It is in the screws holding the chair together. It is in the frame of the building, in the pipes behind the wall, in the cutlery in the drawer, in the car passing outside with tires hissing over wet road. It is in the soil that fed your food, in the tools that harvested it, in the ships and trains that moved it, in the pan that warmed it. Most intimately, it is inside you, travelling through your blood in each quiet moment. A central scientific fact rests at the heart of this iron as an essential element in hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells that helps carry oxygen through the body. You inhale, and oxygen enters your lungs. It passes into blood, binds to iron-containing heme groups, and moves through arteries to tissues that need it. You do not feel each little exchange. Thankfully, your body's not sending push notifications for every molecule. But the work continues, steady and silent, as ordinary as breathing and as extraordinary as fire. You place 2 fingers lightly against your wrist. The pulse is soft, rhythmic, alive. Beneath the skin, iron helps make motion possible. Your muscles, your warmth, your thoughts drifting towards sleep all depend on oxygen carried through dark red rivers. The metal that supports bridges also supports breath. The metal that became rails and knives and beams also glimmers quietly in the chemistry of your body. There is a tenderness in that idea. Iron is often imagined as hard, cold, and stubborn. Yet inside you, it belongs to softness, blood, breath, warmth, fatigue, recovery, dreaming. In one place, iron holds up a tower against the wind. In another, it helps a child run across grass, a singer hold a note, a tired person climb stairs, or you lie still and feel the evening slow around you. You walk in imagination across an open field under a dimming sky. The ground is damp beneath your shoes. The air smells of wet leaves, earth, and distant smoke. Grass brushes your ankles with a cool touch. Under the soil are iron minerals, small and scattered, colouring clays red, yellow, brown, and black. Plants draw nutrients from the ground. Animals eat plants. People eat plants and animals. Iron moves through living systems, not as a dramatic conqueror, but as a trace, a necessity, a small hidden guest at the table. A quirky tidbit glows softly here. Iron is so linked with human life that some old medical and folk traditions treated iron objects as charms for strength, protection, or vitality. A nail, a ring, a blade, or a horseshoe might be placed near a doorway, a cradle, or a sickbed in different cultures. Was the object actually defending anyone from invisible mischief? That depends on how generous you feel toward the household folklore at bedtime. But the instinct makes sense. People felt that iron had authority. It endured heat. It resisted breaking. It made sparks. It seemed like a good material to have on your side when the night felt too large. Modern science gives iron its own kind of wonder without needing to borrow the old spells. Too little iron in the body can lead to anemia, fatigue, weakness, dizziness, or a difficulty concentrating. Too much iron can also be harmful. Balance matters. The same element that allows energy can become dangerous in excess. Nature as usual. prefers not to be simple. It gives you a gift, then adds terms and conditions in very small print. You sit at a wooden table where a cast iron pan cools on a folded cloth. The room smells of tea, toasted bread, and rain. You touch the pan handle carefully. It's still warm. Rough beneath the seasoning, dense with stored heat. Nearby, a stainless steel spoon catches the lamplight. On your finger, perhaps, is a ring made not of iron but shaped by tools that were around you. The ordinary world is full of metal quietly doing its job and asking for almost no applause, which is more than can be said for many humans with microphones. Iron is also planetary, beneath your feet, far deeper than any mine. Earth has a core made mostly of iron and nickel. The outer core is liquid, moving slowly under pressures and temperatures almost impossible to imagine. Its motion helps generate Earth's magnetic field, the invisible shield that guides compasses and protects the planet from parts of the solar wind. You cannot hear it, you cannot touch it, yet it surrounds your life like a silent instrument humming below perception. You picture the planet at night, blue and black in space, wrapped in a magnetic field shaped by motion deep within. At the center is iron, not a tool, not a beam, not a blade, but a planetary heart. The ground under your bed, the streets outside, the oceans, the mountains, the cities, the fields, all rest above that deep metallic interior. You are carried by a world with iron in its bones. Even the stars are part of the story. Iron is forged in the lives and deaths of massive stars, in stellar cores. Lighter elements fuse into heavier ones through immense heat and pressure. Iron marks a kind of limit in that process, because fusing iron does not release energy in the way earlier fusion does. In the violent deaths of stars, elements scatter into space, joining clouds of gas and dust that eventually form new stars, planets, stones, oceans, bodies, and quiet rooms where people listen to the rain. Scientists still refine the details of how much iron and other heavy elements are produced in different cosmic events, including supernovae and collisions involving dense stellar remnants. The broad truth remains astonishing that iron in your blood was not born in a kitchen, a mine, or a furnace. Its deep origin belongs to cosmic processes older than Earth. You're not just made of stardust in the poetic greeting card sense. You're made of elements with histories measured in billions of years, which is quite a lot to carry while deciding whether to make another cup of tea. You look down at your hand again. Skin, veins, warmth, pulse. Nothing about it seems cosmic. It looks ordinary, familiar, perhaps a little tired. Yet ordinary is where the largest truths hide. Iron links the cave wall, the ploughed field, the forge, the railway, the hospital, the kitchen, the planet, the star, and the body. It links breath to geology, labour to chemistry, empire to cookware, rust to memory. There is another uncertainty, quieter and more human. Scholars still argue about how best to tell the history of materials like iron, as a story of inventions, as a story of labour, as a story of violence, as a story of ecology, or as a story of daily life. Each version is true, but incomplete alone. A bridge is an engineering achievement, but also ore, fuel, wages, risk, maintenance, traffic, weather, and the hand that tightens one bolt. A knife is a tool, but also trade, hunger, skill, and care. A blood cell is biology, but also ancestry, food, medicine, and breath. You walk now through a museum at closing time. The floors are polished and faintly cool beneath your steps. Cases glow softly in darkening rooms. Inside them rest iron objects from many lives, a farming tool worn thin at the edge, a rusted key, a ceremonial blade, a nail from a ship, a cooking pot, a railway spike, a surgeon's instrument, a meteorite fragment under glass. The air smells of waxed floors, dust, old paper, and climate control. Your footsteps make small echoes. Each object is quiet, but not empty. The key once turned in a lock. The pot once steamed over a fire. The spike held a rail while trains shook the ground. The blade may have been feared, admired, or simply cleaned by someone who wanted it not to rust. The meteorite fragment sits apart, dark and dense, carrying the cold memory of space. They are all iron, or iron's close family, shaped by different hopes. You leave the museum and step into evening. Streetlights shine on wet pavement. A bicycle leans against a railing. A bus sighs at the curb, somewhere high above. Steel beams hold apartments full of meals, arguments, lullabies, and sleeping pets beneath the street. Pipes carry water in darkness. Inside your chest, iron helps carry breath. Far under everything, the planet's iron heart turns in mystery. The rain eases. The city smells fresh now, washed but not innocent stone, leaves, rubber, metal, and warm bread from a shop closing its door. You breathe in, you breathe out. The pulse continues. Now the room returns around you, dim and gentle. The lamp is softer than it was. The cup on the table has cooled. The metal spoon no longer shines brightly, only faintly, like a moon seen through cloud. Rain slides down the window in slow lines. You let your shoulders loosen. You let the day set down its tools. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe gives one small click, then rests. Iron remains, but it does not demand attention. It holds, it carries, it remembers heat without needing flame. It waits in the earth, in the body, in the quiet furniture of civilization. Your breath moves easily, in and out, guided by a rhythm older than language and softer than thought. The night grows deeper, sounds become fewer. The world settles into its hidden supports, and you settle with it, calm and warm, held by the small or steady miracles that do not need to be seen. The rain becomes a whisper. The room becomes still. Your pulse is gentle. The dark is kind. And somewhere, inside you and beneath you, iron keeps its silent watch,